Welcome to Tifton, Georgia. Today we walk through a gateway to yesteryear, into a facility that is a stark contrast to the exhibits it displays, the relics of our rugged and hard-working past, which outlasted their day.
Look at this trough.
Here they had a display we specifically liked, a section on the history and works of Joel Chandler Harris, the man who penned the Uncle Remus stories. And Stacey brought her stuffed burr rabbit.
Burr rabbit, you didn't come home.
Pictured is the man that was probably the inspiration for Uncle Remus. These boards tell of how Mr. Harris heard these African-American folk tales firsthand in his youth. Folk tales which originated in the slave community and were passed down through the generations. George Terrell is the man most often credited with sharing the stories with Joel as a boy, who in turn wrote them down. They were an instant success. This part shows the Wren's Nest, Harris's house in Atlanta, its oldest house museum. On display are copies of the books. Without Joel Chandler Harris hearing and writing these stories, they may have been lost forever. And how many of them were from other areas. This old surrey was found in a barn at Turnwold Plantation when it was being taken down. It's an original piece. Next is a section on livestock, specifically that most entertaining and delicious of fowl, chickens, and all the info you might need on eggs, from chicken to sorting to packaging.
So the pulp containers are actually the best way to carry eggs, but the styrofoam, you can write on the lid, so they went with styrofoam.
Oh.
So before styrofoam, they would go in those pulp containers, and they're nestled in there really good, and that's like the fewest breakage, I guess. But styrofoam's more convenient.
Wood burning, early gas, and electric stoves. Little is as tasty as food cooked on a wood stove, and here are some examples of home cooking evolution. Just look at those coils. Next, the turpentine industry. There is an informative dialogue that plays as you walk through, and plenty of implements of the trade. As well as a recreation of a turpentiner's cabin. I've wondered how turpentine was made, and I didn't even know it until now.
I never figured out how turpentine went with agriculture, but I guess it's the gum off the trees.
Wow.
Here, the aroma of paradise. Tobacco.
I had no idea there was this much tobacco in Georgia.
Man, that smells good.
Whether you like to smoke or not, the smell of these dried leaves is amazing.
What do you think of this, honey?
I love it.
The display shows the process of this area of agriculture. Recordings share the first-hand experiences in this area.
We learned a lot on the farm. It was hot and it was tiring, and we didn't realize it, but we were out there and to be decision makers. We were learning to take pride in our work. us on to where we are now.
Dad and brothers learned me a lot in farming and in respect for life.
I learned that a hard day's work is a good day's work.
We amble back out amongst the array of bygone-era farm equipment. And a miniature turpentine fire still. I found this very cool.
It's even got smoke coming out of the chimney.
The realism is impressive. Then one of the guides showed us some handmade figurines
What do men make all this?
of sheep.
Wow.
There's some sell, by $100.
What amazing craftsmanship.
All kinds of
Some
sheep.
from Russia, they said the face, black face like that.
Oh.
I like these fluffy ones.
So does he use real cotton to,
Yeah, that's amazing they make it like that.
Wow.
And I just to tell you, come like this, that's a good thing that's not human, don't it?
Amazing.
Here's where you can find the artist.
Make sure you plan for the whole day when you come here because it is huge and fascinating. There's so much to see. There's a museum inside about agriculture, and then there's this whole village we haven't even started to see yet, and we've been here a long time, so it's definitely a fun full day.
As Stacey said, there is a lot to see here. This video is just part one. The grounds are expansive, and there is a train.
We're here on Wednesday. The train only runs on Saturdays. Oh, I'll be back.
Schools take field trips here. Rustic signs point the way. They have plowed areas for gardens along the dirt roads.
Check it out. Oh, this is freshly plowed field with the dirt clods. I grew up around this, y'all.
The exhibits are laid out in a timeline from oldest to newest, at least as new as it gets.
Exhibit 1. Way back, a log cabin. Instead of a brick foundation or a stone foundation, it's got a wooden foundation.
I found this interesting. All of these buildings were donated. The inside is period furnished, though not the Clark's actual furniture. It's a window to a simpler, though more primitive lifestyle. I believe these photos are actually the Clarks. We walked to the separate kitchen and found
This is really neat.
Oh, good. I think so. I enjoy working here. I find it very peaceful, except for the highway out there.
Yes, it is. It is remarkably close to the highway.
And you have to it'd be like living next to a railroad track, where eventually you don't notice it.
Yeah.
But people that are just here for the day probably do notice. This cabin was built in 1886, and it was originally over in Colquitt County. It was moved over here. Sometimes, the families will find an old place like this, and they don't want it or need it, but they donate them to sites like this. So it came over here to us. The original cabin up front with the logs in it is original.
Wow.
It has 2 additions to it. And then this structure right here is like the kitchen would have been. The original kitchen was just too fragile and to move. It just couldn't be.
Oh, that makes sense. So it's not but there's a separation between the house and the kitchen in case there's a fire or something, right? Okay.
Right. And that walkway probably would have been 30 or 40 feet long to separate the kitchen, because the kitchen was hot, especially in Georgia in the summer. It was smoky, it was smelly, and did you notice the fireplaces when you came in?
I did.
Stick your head out here to the side, and you can see the construction of the fireplace.
Oh yeah.
It's mud and sticks, and that dries out very quickly when the heat is constantly.
Oh,
Yeah.
These two rooms were not original to cabin, but the boards here were sawmilled here,
Oh.
and some old wood was used, and this is the kind of structure that you would have seen.
The ceiling's very high. Like.
Yeah, like a barn. And at that time, they didn't have ceilings, so a lot of your heat went right out.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, no air conditioning.
No air conditioning, how about that? And you will notice that there are no glass panes in the windows. There just wasn't glass around. I'm sure they had glass in the United States in the 1800s, but this was your window. And it would hook with something like that. These were made up in our blacksmith shop. These hooks. So that was your window, and as you can see, they did leave a little to be desired.
Yeah.
This would have been your hearth. We cook on this every week.
Ooh.
We have a lot of school groups that come through. You may have seen some of them. And we fix them a meal. So this year, we're fixing chicken perlo, which is chicken, rice, and 2 vegetables. And they could be whatever they had in the garden. They might have peas and carrots or okra and green beans or whatever, but that was the recipe. The chicken was probably a hen that had quit laying. So when they get old and they quit laying, they have to be repurposed. And so, because they can't be just eating their chickens all the time because they need the eggs.
Right.
In addition to eating the eggs, they could also take them into the nearest town and maybe trade them for stuff they didn't have, like flour, coffee, things that they couldn't grow.
Wow.
So, and the rice probably would have been one of those things that they traded for, because rice isn't typically grown in this area of Georgia.
So eggs were almost like money. Like you can take your eggs and get other things.
Yeah. In fact, all of their, eggs, butter, if they had more beans than they needed to know what to do with, they would either trade with neighbors or go into the next little town to some kind of store and trade. So, really, really hard sugar, which we take for granted.
Oh yeah.
Rare coffee.
Now we complain about the price of sugar, and it's like, what is it? $2 a bag.
But you can get it.
Yes.
But you can get it. And so you see they use kerosene lamp oil. At the time when these farms were prevalent in the area, there was no railroad here yet. People hadn't started the turpentine. They hadn't started the lumber industry. So people were kind of out here in the woods. And it wasn't all cleared off like this. It was the big piney woods like you see out there. Thick piney woods, a lot of undergrowth. If they had cattle, hogs, goats, whatever, they would let them free range. That's what they called this kind of a farm. The farming was called ranging. And their cows would be out there in the trees eating the wire grass. And you see the cows that are out here on this side? Those are Piney Woods cattle. They are descended from the cattle that came over with the Spaniards to Florida and Alabama and South Carolina in the 1500s.
Wow.
There are very few of them left, 500 or 600, I think. It's a heritage cow. They're very docile. They're very resistant to parasites. They will eat almost anything.
Wow.
And the farmers used to turn them out in, the thick piney woods underbrush, and they would keep all that growth down because they would eat there's just nothing that they won't eat.
Right.
And most cattle are a little more particular than that. They're also very good milkers.
Oh, wow.
Very good milkers, and we want to try to keep them around. Also on this farm, you've got a cane syrup building out here in the back.
Wow.
Those rocks that are making that up came from the original home site
Nice.
over in Colquitt County. They brought them over and made that. The mason jar was invented in 1857. that far back. So they would have access to preserving foods like this, so that they could have these happy pickles. We've got squash and green beans and tomatoes, and there's some jam in here, and that could be preserved. And then what they didn't have in the wintertime, when these crops weren't abundant, they could have it. They could also preserve meat this way.
Oh, yeah.
And then most farmhouses would have had a smokehouse, which is just a little building with a smoke pit there, and that's how they would cure their meat.
Oh, yeah.
And it would last a long, long time. One of the first things they did when they got their little piece there in the land, cutting down the trees, splitting the logs, and making a cabin. This is the real, true, original cabin.
Wow.
And they used the tools that were at hand to do this. So it's not like they could run to a sawmill and get all these things cut. They did it all by hand. You'll see that this construction looks different, more like a lap siding.
Yeah.
This was an addition to the original cabin and originally used as the boys' room. That's where the boys slept. We are using it multi-purpose for a dining.
Cool.
This was the center of the house and the kitchen. But the Clarks lived here. They had 7 children while they lived in this cabin.
Oh, wow.
Which explains the addition. This is a rope bed. Back in the day, we didn't have mattresses and box springs. So, here is your box spring, essentially. These are heavy ropes crisscrossed across the bed.
Oh, yeah.
And then your mattresses made of corn husk, chicken feathers, and down would go on there, and all your quilts. And eventually, after sleeping on here, the ropes would start to sag and come loose, just because that's what they do. And so they would take this little number right here, and they would take it down here in the bottom, and I'm not sure, I've never had to do this. They would twist and tighten everything up. Hence the saying, sleep tight.
No!
Oh.
That's so cool!
So the next time you tell somebody to sleep tight, think about them being in one of these old-time beds where they had to tighten up their ropes that day, and then they could sleep tight.
That is very interesting.
That is fun.
There's
to
a
know.
few pictures here of some of the Clark, and I think these were the original Clark people.
Wow.
Right here. And then here's some latter-day people over here. And here's the Clark family who lived in this cabin. They had 11 children that lived to adulthood. But they decided in 1900 to build a bigger house. And they did, build a big 2-story house right in front of the cabin.
Oh.
Yeah, with stones through the cabin.
Mrs. Clark was a postmistress.
Which is
Oh.
unusual because most women did not work outside the home. And this was her bedroom. The mail would be delivered once or twice a week, and she would sort through it, and then neighbors would come up to this window, and she would hand them out their mail.
Wow.
Now, later years, they got a little bit better road system, a few more people. They decided to let her have a bicycle.
Oh.
So, and because she had to ride a bicycle, which is kind of hard in an outfit like this, with a skirt, they did let her wear pants. So those overalls were her official postmistress outfit. So she could wear pants. Again, that was unusual for a woman in this day and time. There were, in the 1880s, there were 206 rural post offices in one county.
Finished at the Clark house, we headed to the next one. There was rain.
Okay, we're on the front porch of the next house, seeking shelter from the rain that has come. And to see it as well. And it looks like another nice old frontier house. Hi, pretty good. How are you? This is neat.
An 1845 log home from Dooley, now Crisp County. Similar furnishings, another example of farm life in the 19th century. Same rough-hewn lifestyle so indicative of us, not that terribly long ago. This bed seems to have springs rather than rope. A little progress. There was something about this room I liked.
How neat is this? Look at these walls. This door.
I found it visually appealing and bright.
They appear to have put a new roof on it, maybe?
The house is similar to its neighbor across the bridge, with a few differences.
Okay, so you can see it's similar to the Clark house, but they've got whitewash on the walls. The roof has tin on it, and the hearth looks different. Not as open, I guess. So if we're talking about like the next evolution of the houses, you can see, I guess, the improvements.
The smell in these old houses always gets to me. The wood mixed with the fire and the fireplace or the stove, and past meals cooked here, because part of it always lingers.
On to the next structure.
This would be the school.
This is the church.
Oh,
You can do it over.
Church was an important part of life for these communities.
let the fields be jubilant, and everything in them. Let the trees of the forest sing. Let them sing for joy before the Lord, the God of Israel. 1 Chronicles 16. And here we have another building.
Good afternoon.
How you doing?
Good. How are y'all doing?
I'm doing quite well.
Welcome to the Sand Hill Farm Schoolhouse. It was built in 1895 by Mr. Johnny Gibbs. It was located in Tifton, Georgia. That's 8 miles west of Tifton. Mr. Johnny had 10 children. His brother Alan had 14 children.
Wow.
And their brother James had 4 children. So that 28 children made up this school.
Wow.
We don't know if a family member taught or if they hired a teacher, but we do know grades 1 through 8 was taught. And they taught reading, writing, arithmetic, geography, English language, spelling, and cursive writing. And that's the original blackboard right here.
Wow.
Quite a difference from the tech of today.
These are not the original desks. They had tables and chairs.
Really?
The inn is not original, but the potbelly stove is, and this building is 123 years old.
Wow.
The school closed in 1906, and by that time everybody had graduated from the 8th grade. They used it for storage until they donated it to us.
It always amazes me that these buildings still stand in such good condition.
And these 2 benches were called the recitation benches, because back then they memorized Bible verses a lot and poems. This is a 3-piece bathing suit. Our curator found it and just stuck it in here.
That's really neat.
Those look like.
Oh yeah, like on the Lost in the Prairie, they had a lunch pail. And when I was little, you called your lunchbox a lunch pail, even though it was a box. Like,
Right.
we were still saying lunch pail.
And we had the quills. They probably put them by their on their tables and wrote. Paper was invented then, but it was expensive, and so they didn't use it a whole lot.
The problem with a place like this is that you could do a whole show on every little section because there's so much information. It's like if you're doing a show on the whole thing, then it's just little bits and pieces here and there, but there's a lot of information here.
You can clearly see the progression of life in America as you pass each exhibit. Here we see a larger farm setup with a mule.
Hey fella, how you doing? I hear you like to be petted. Buddy? How you doing? Oh, you're pretty. You're pretty. I'm sorry, buddy, I don't have any food for you. You okay, buddy?
This guy just wanted a snack.
Okay, so I petted the mule. He seems disappointed that I didn't have an apple, and he walked away. So I'm going to leave him to his paddock. Oh, that's a depot.
Train wasn't running today. That's in part 2. I thought I'd check out this house, but
Stacey found the grist mill. Oh yeah.
the mill wasn't operating today. But I got some shots. More on this later.
So this one has a little bit more hidden wheel. Alright, so I've already made a plan to come back here because there's really only so much I can shoot today because it's just too expensive and they close in probably less than an hour now. So we're going to get some quick shots and then I'll do further shooting when we come back. So we're going to walk down to the depot on this narrow gauge train track, and do not do this. We're only doing this because no entry. We're only doing this because it is a weekday and there's no train running today. And we could like just step off to the side, but don't do this.
This is early era train stuff, the best kind, with a water tower. The building was closed, so I shot through the windows.
I love the woodwork on these old buildings, on these old depots.
Then we found Main Street, rural, as it would have looked in the 1800s, or close enough. The feed and seed store. I remember places like this from my youth.
Very cool. Look at these cabinets.
wooden display cases, and shelves.
Wow.
Attached is a veterinarian office, essential to any farm with livestock.
Wow. This has got to be the coolest feeding seat I've ever seen.
We walk the boardwalk as though in a western. On down to the general store. / soda fountain.
Hey.
What era is this drugstore from?
Well, the whole village out here represents 1870 to 1910.
Okay.
So it would be in that, somewhere in that time period. The furnishings, though, out of this drugstore came from a drugstore from Rebecca, Georgia.
Okay.
And it was in operation in the early 1900s.
Okay. It's very nice. Very nice.
When you visit here, you are visiting a good example of quite a bit of historic Georgia, as these places come from far and
The
wide.
pharmacy, awesome.
This was prescriptions on this side, and that was just the office part of the drugstore.
I gotcha.
It was not a post office.
Okay.
Some people think it was a post office, but it wasn't.
They've got a pretty good representation of what our world was like 150 years ago.
Ooh, cigars. Yum. Wow. Are all of these medicines original to the store?
I don't know about that.
Okay.
Because they did not come, all of these did not come from that drugstore.
Right, yeah.
They, the artifacts in here have been donated by a variety of people.
Right.
So,
Very nice exhibit, though.
Yeah, this is neat. See, this says St. Joseph. Like, there used to be a baby aspirin that was St.
Oh,
Joseph.
yeah. I want to say there might still be. Cool. Very nice. I would like some of these candy canes that I saw. Oh, yeah, here we go.
yeah. The soda fountain area is a very time period thing. And this is out of the original drugstore from Rebecca, along with all the other furnishings. And it is time period. The centerpiece there, the soda fountain part, was made for us, the Coca-Cola Foundation that built for us.
Wow, that's cool.
And is it functioning?
I do get root beer out of it, and we get soda water out of it. But it would have been where you would have gotten your
Yeah.
syrups, like the Coca-Cola syrup, or your creams, or whatever that you put with your soda water.
Very neat. So I think that's all that we're going to shoot today. This will be maybe part 1, and then part 2 can be when I come back or whatever. But this is really a nice place. This is really way more than I expected. Way, way, way more than I expected. And I'm very happy with what I have seen here today. And I hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll see you again.
Coming soon. I come back. There's a train and more.